What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space and we're back in Space Engineers, and today I wanted to do a video talking a little bit about the Lotus. A lot of you guys are going to be familiar with the whole Lotus missile design concept, whatever you want to call it. I've been iterating it over the years and I'm still pretty pleased with it. I think it's still probably the best weapon sort of concept or design I ever made. And of course, as we go towards planets and so on, I've been musing about how to make that whole concept work properly on planets and trying to make a version of it that works on planets in a way that really suits the environment. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Lotus concept at all, I'll try and use bits of footage in this video, kind of here and there, maybe even end with some highlights. But in front of me here is kind of the Lotus fleet as released. There are tons more versions of different prototypes and so on than this. There's cubed ones, there's ones that look like lawnmowers, there's all sorts. But these are the ones that I released, with the exception of the two at the back, which I'll come on to in a second. But first I wanted to go and have a look at the little one here, the very first Lotus I did, and talk a bit about why it was kind of a good design, what about it I wanted to keep, and why I'm trying to keep using it. So, as you can see, the projectiles on here are super duper simple. It's a merge block and a warhead, or at the front a merge block and a decoy, and of course those are designed to give it some protection against turrets. And the wonders of that is there's no power on the warheads, there's nothing that needs conveyed up, so there's no ammunition, there's nothing that needs loading in there, which means a single welder can weld that no problem. It welds really quickly, and it's completely fire and forget. The problem is, of course, that you've got no way of really determining what happens to those projectiles once they leave the body of the craft. So hence the spinning thing came about, where the entire missile rotates to try and impart a bit of momentum to the warheads, allowing them to spread out in a kind of fan-like pattern, which is where the name the Lotus came from in the first place. So main advantage there is size efficiency and cost of warhead efficiency. You can't really make a warhead any smaller than that that's still going to detach from a craft. That is bare bones. Then, of course, you've got the fact that the entire thing works off a projection system, so it's a small missile that is very safe in and of itself. It's got a couple of warheads at the front, but it's not that scary as a missile. But once launched, it projects its entire field of warheads. There are huge numbers of them by the time they arrive, and of course, the newer versions of it got better and better at projecting these fields. And the end result of that was, it was quite difficult to stop, because by the time you knew it was coming, by the time you were aware that this field of stuff was in your direction, it was pretty much already too late. The decoys worked quite well to keep it protected, and of course it did pretty large amounts of damage, although to begin with that damage was very, very spread, and then I slowly got better at making it more and more focused. And we ended up moving on, and there's been a version like this one, for example. I think this was number 3. This one is designed to split into parts as we go. You can't really see it, but there's a merge block in there. And basically this missile is in 3 bits. There's a front penetrative head with cargo containers containing ore, which used to be kind of the nuke trick. And then you've got a middle section that's got the decoys on it. That is designed to be kind of in front of the main warhead so that the decoys arrive first. And then you've got the final explosive bit at the back. And there's been ones that are designed to operate stationary that were a bit more complex, ones that came back to where they started again and were supposed to be reused, and all that sort of stuff. But of course, eventually we came on to planets, and where the problems lie with planets. So first up, planets are quite hard to run, which means the sim speed and the FPS of the game drops quite often. And unfortunately, this seems to introduce some randomness on its own. It shouldn't. The sim speed should just represent the speed at which the game is running, and if the game can't keep up, it slows everything down to make sure everything happens at the right time still. Unfortunately, that's actually not how it plays out, and instead what happens is once the sim speed gets low enough, these things start exploding like this. For whatever reason, they'll just blow themselves up. Unfortunately, there isn't a solution to that. That's just SimSpeed and Space Engineers at the moment, so I figured, okay, don't make them too big. Try and keep away from scenarios where the SimSpeed's really low. That should be all we need. But then we run into gravity, the big killer. Because these missiles, they rotate to spread their warheads out, which is fine in space where there's nothing to prevent that movement. So they keep on spreading, and you could change the speed of the rotation to dictate how much they spread out. On planets, the gravity starts affecting them the second they split off, and so they spread out for a bit, but also start to drop. And so what you end up with is kind of much more like a bell-shaped, with all your warheads and your decoys in front of the main missile. This is really helpful, and also doesn't make complete sense. It's because, for whatever reason in Space Engineers, when something has a thruster powered, it can travel at 100 meters a second. However, when something is free-falling, it can travel at 104 meters a second. So as you can see here, the warheads and the decoys end up in front of the main body of the missile. That's all really good. This is all really helpful. And whenever you're shooting at a target from directly above, or reasonably above, from space for example, which is kind of how this would be used, it works fine. You get a lovely precise spread, loads and loads and loads of warheads as you'd expect, and the new version does probably the best job of all of them, of using the decoys and spreading the decoys out to protect the rest of the field. The problem arises when you now try and twist that ship horizontally. You try and move it away from the vertical position. That spinning motion, which was working with gravity, now has gravity working against it. The ones falling off the bottom pretty much go straight down immediately, so miss the target. They're going to fall early. The ones on the top can actually hit you as they separate and blow you up, and the ones on the side kind of do a bit of both. They have upwards momentum on one side, downwards momentum on the other side, and in general it makes a mess. You're pretty much going to blow yourself up, but more importantly, very little of what you're shooting hits the target, because of course it's all falling early because there's nothing on there to stop them from falling. So the natural evolution is, okay, so we'll put some thrusters on it and we'll try and stop it from falling. We'll try and make those projectiles controlled, which is a bit anti the original Lotus purpose. We're starting to get really quite complex projectiles on this now. You've got gyros, thrusters, batteries, potentially sensors. They're quite complex all of a sudden. And it still doesn't work. Because of the spinning motion, there's no reliable way of telling which way round these things are going to be, or which way round they're going to be in comparison to your target, which is where you want them to be flying towards. So unfortunately, the summary of all of this is, it's not that well suited for planets. It does the original role, that orbital strike, you can do that. But when it comes to anything else, precision bombardment, any of the other scenarios in which you might want to use the Lotus, it's not ideal. It has some big problems. So in the end, we have what you can see going off here. I don't know what version we call this. It's blue, so the blue sky device has always kind of amused me just because it's so very isn't. But either way, this version is probably going to be the last, at least for a while. I figured let's go all out stupid, so this one is the most destructive by a long shot, and if you shoot it from orbit down at a target, you will remove the target. I'm pretty damn sure of that. The decoys do a great job of protecting it, especially with how spread out they are in this kind of, as I said, it's like a bell flower almost now, the way they spread out. The main warheads, because the gravity actually helps keep them tight to the body of the ship, they don't spread too far, rain down repeatedly on the same sort of area, repeatedly on the same locations, so it's quite good targeting wise. But of course it's got this cannot go horizontally, no good from ground to air to back to ground again, for example. So there you kind of go. It's almost a last sign off for the Lotus for the time being, with a completely ridiculous version. I'll stick it up on the workshop if you guys want to go and crash a server somewhere. That's normally what it's pretty good for. It will crash servers still, it will lag servers to hell. My PC's pretty strong, it's about the only reason it doesn't completely fall apart. But by all means go and try it out, it is still a bit of a laugh. It's got a few changes, so most notable changes, bar 3 has got your camera and your go button on it. You've got some turrets on the front to kind of, they're basically shooting down enemy missiles targeted at you. I figured, hey, two can play that game, you've got turrets to shoot me down, I'll have turrets to shoot you down as well. Perfect. And that's about it. So it'll be up on the workshop. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed this video as well. If you did, please hit like, please hit subscribe, it really does help me in the channel out. If you didn't, then hit me up down in the comments. Let me know how I can improve, please. Don't just hit that dislike button, but actually help me get better. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Woo!